A Christmas Eve dinner becomes a merciless ambush when a powerful mother-in-law decides to humiliate and destroy a pregnant woman in front of the entire family. She thinks she can force a divorce. She thinks she can break a mother's spirit. She thinks she can take her grandchild without consequence. But what she doesn't know is that the woman she's crushing under her heel has a father who can dismantle her entire world. And when he walks through those doors, everything the Holts built begins to crumble. What follows is a fight for dignity, truth, and a future that no one at that table saw coming. The sound of silverware against porcelain drifted softly through the grand dining room of the Holt family estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. Garlands of warm, golden lights wrapped around each column. A towering Christmas tree shimmered in the corner, decorated with heirloom ornaments passed down for 3 generations. A classical arrangement of Silent Night played softly from hidden speakers, filling the air with a smooth, elegant version of the carol. Everything in the room was designed to look like the perfect holiday celebration, everything except the look on Emma's face. Emma sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, her hands resting gently over her stomach. At 6 months pregnant, she moved with a kind of careful grace, every movement protective. She'd been feeling a slight pressure in her lower back all afternoon. The doctor told her it was normal. Still, the holiday stress was making her uneasy. She tried to stay focused on breathing calmly. Inhale slow, exhale slow. Her baby kicked softly beneath her palms, almost as if he sensed something she couldn't quite grasp. Across the table, her husband, Andrew Holt, the 3-year-old CEO of Holt Industries, raised his wineglass in an attempt to look cheerful. He offered Emma a quick smile. It was the same strained smile he'd been giving her for months. It felt like a mask. No warmth, no love, just a performance. The dinner conversation was filled with the usual talk of stock portfolios, political connections, and how the Holts always managed to secure the most exclusive invitations in the city. Emma listened silently. She never felt like she belonged in these conversations. She was polite. She tried to be gracious, but deep down, she felt like an outsider, surrounded by rigid walls made of money, status, and old family pride. At the head of the table sat the room's true authority, Eleanor Holt, Andrew's mother. Her posture was impeccable, her expression unreadable, and her presence seemed to command silence, even without her saying a word. She wore an emerald green dress that gleamed like polished stone. Her hair was pulled back just tightly enough to show every line of disapproval she'd earned over decades of judging people for failing to meet her standards. She had never accepted Emma. Not on the wedding day, not during the pregnancy announcement, and not tonight. Especially not tonight. The dinner plates had just been cleared when Eleanor lifted her crystal glass and tapped it gently with a spoon. The sharp, clear chime echoed through the room. All conversation stopped instantly. Every eye turned to her. Emma straightened in her chair, one hand instinctively tightening over her belly. Even the baby inside her seemed to pause. Eleanor rose with perfect composure. She swept her gaze slowly across the table, making sure every single person was watching. When her eyes landed on Emma, they stopped cold, sharp, almost triumphant. "As we gather tonight in the spirit of family and honesty," Eleanor began, "there is a matter we can no longer ignore, a matter concerning the future of our house." Emma felt her heart begin to race. Fast, hard. A tight pressure squeezed her stomach. She glanced toward Andrew for reassurance. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Eleanor continued, each word precise. "Our son Andrew deserves stability. He deserves a partner who can support him and elevate the Holt legacy. Unfortunately, that is not what he currently has." Emma's breath hitched. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. Andrew slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. His hands were stiff at his sides. His expression was blank, like someone following instructions rather than making a choice. Eleanor reached under the centerpiece of red roses and gilded pine cones. She lifted a folder and placed it on the table in front of Emma. The movement was slow, deliberate, final. Inside the folder was a divorce agreement. Emma stared at it as if it were something unreal, something from a nightmare, not from a dinner table decorated for Christmas. Andrew cleared his throat. His voice came out flat. "Emma, I think this is for the best." Her hands trembled, her vision blurred. For a moment, She thought she might faint and gripped the table to steady herself. Right now? During Christmas dinner? Her voice was barely a whisper. Eleanor's response was instant. There is no better time. The family is present. The truth must be addressed. Emma pressed her hand to her belly. The baby stirred, a reminder that she wasn't alone, even if the room around her felt brutally isolating. Around the table, relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. A few whispered to each other. Someone at the far end muttered, "But she's pregnant." Someone else quickly shushed them. No one dared to oppose Eleanor. Emma tried to swallow the rising panic. "Andrew, please, look at me." But he kept his gaze fixed on the polished tablecloth. He seemed smaller than usual, almost afraid. But afraid of whom? Certainly not her. Eleanor placed a pen beside the folder. The metallic click echoed like a warning. "Sign it, Emma. This family deserves clarity, and you deserve to know your place." Emma felt her heart shatter inside her chest. She tried to breathe. She tried to steady her shaking hands, but the truth was pressing in on her from every direction. The Holt family had chosen the most humiliating moment imaginable, the most vulnerable moment imaginable, and they had done it without hesitation. The room didn't move at first. It felt as if the entire dining table had been frozen in place. The golden lights overhead flickered softly. The choir music continued to play its peaceful melody, completely oblivious that the world at the center of the room had just collapsed. Emma's breath shuddered in her chest as she stared down at the divorce papers before her. The edges of the documents had already curled slightly from the pressure of her trembling hands. Her stomach clenched, and she instinctively pressed a palm against it, trying to soothe both herself and the baby inside. She could hear every tiny sound. The clink of a spoon on a plate at the far end of the table, the rustle of a silk dress as someone shifted uncomfortably in their chair. The soft hum of the fireplace, which normally brought warmth, now felt distant and cold. Someone coughed. Someone else muttered something under their breath, but no one spoke clearly. No one addressed her. No one asked if she was okay. Her vision blurred again. She blinked hard, trying to keep tears from falling, but a single warm drop slid down her cheek anyway. It landed directly on the top page of the divorce folder. The ink smudged where the tear fell. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed even though she had nothing to be ashamed of. Her voice came out shaky. "I'm pregnant. Why are you doing this now?" She wasn't sure who she was asking. Andrew, his mother, the room at large. No one answered immediately. Finally, one of Andrew's cousins, sitting across from her, whispered, "This isn't right." But when Eleanor turned her head in that direction, the cousin straightened up in fear and stared intently at her plate. The room fell silent again. Emma took a slow breath, but it hitched halfway down. Her chest tightened. Her baby moved again, almost as if responding to her distress. She placed both hands over her belly and whispered so softly only the child could hear, "It's going to be okay. I'm right here." The words were meant to be reassuring, yet they faltered as they left her lips. She looked at Andrew again, hoping for even a flicker of humanity. His eyes remained downcast, his shoulders tense. He looked like a man who had surrendered control of his entire life, yet he was letting his mother dictate the destruction of his family. Emma felt heat rise in her face. It wasn't anger, not yet. Just the deep ache of someone who had loved too much and received too little. A few seats away, one of the older uncles leaned toward another and murmured, "She might pass out. Look at her." His companion shushed him quickly, but it was too late. Emma had heard it. She did feel faint. The walls seemed to shift slightly. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. The Christmas lights blurred into soft white and gold circles. The conversation in the room shifted to soft but cruel whispers. She heard fragments. "That's why Eleanor never liked her. Should have known her place. At least the baby will still be a Holt." Each sentence felt like a needle pricking her skin. Eleanor slowly settled back into her chair, satisfied with how the scene was unfolding. She folded her napkin and placed it neatly in her lap, as if nothing unusual had happened. Her voice cut through the air. "Someone get her some water. She looks unsteady." The comment wasn't compassionate, it was belittling. It framed Emma as weak, emotional, incapable. A server quickly stepped forward with a glass of water. His hands trembled slightly as he set it in front of her. Emma managed a soft, "Thank you," though she could barely speak. She raised the glass to her lips, but her hand shook so violently that a few drops spilled onto the tablecloth. The white fabric soaked up the water, leaving a small, dark stain that spread slowly. Eleanor clicked her tongue in disapproval. "Can't even hold a glass properly." The room felt colder. Emma set the glass down. "I'm overwhelmed. I'm pregnant. This isn't the right time for any of this." Her voice cracked. "Please, can we just talk in private instead of doing this in front of everyone?" Eleanor shook her head firmly. "There is nothing left to discuss. The family deserves clarity in plain sight. We will not hide uncomfortable truths." Her gaze drifted to Emma's belly. "And it is better you accept this now, before the child arrives. Our family requires structure, not confusion." Emma's heart sank. She couldn't understand how a woman could be so cruel, especially to someone carrying her own grandchild. She felt another tear roll down her face, followed by another. They fell, silently. They fell onto the tablecloth, then onto the papers. Each tear added a new smudge on top of the first. She tried to wipe them away, but the act only made her trembling worse. Someone at the far end of the table whispered, "I feel awful for her." Another voice whispered back, "Don't let Eleanor hear you say that." The tension grew so thick it was suffocating. Emma closed her eyes for a moment. She tried to imagine peace. She tried to imagine herself in the small apartment where she grew up, where Christmas meant hot chocolate, soft blankets, and laughter. A place where love didn't need to be proven. A place where family didn't punish vulnerability. But the memory only deepened her sorrow, because she realized how far she had drifted from the kind of life she once knew. When she opened her eyes, a tear slid off her chin and landed on her dress. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed again, though she shouldn't have been. She looked toward the tall windows at the far end of the hall. Snow had started to fall outside. Soft, white flakes drifted down in slow, gentle spirals. Christmas snow, the kind that usually warmed her heart. Tonight, it felt like a reminder of everything cold around her. "Finally," she whispered, barely audible, "I never thought you would treat the mother of your grandchild this way." Her voice broke on the last word. No one answered. The only sound in the entire room was the quiet beat of her own heart, terrified and fragile, but still trying to hold steady for the baby she carried. The room slowly regained motion, but not warmth. The clink of a fork hitting a plate, the soft drag of a chair leg against the polished floor. People adjusted their posture, but no one dared to speak aloud. The atmosphere felt shrouded in a dense fog of discomfort, and every breath Emma took felt heavier than the last. Her hands remained protectively over her belly, as if shielding her child from the wounding words she sensed were still to come. Eleanor Holt lifted her chin, preparing for her next statement. She looked like a queen addressing a lesser court. She placed her fingertips lightly on the rim of her water glass, tapping it once as if commanding full attention again. When she spoke, her voice carried across the table with the precision of someone who had rehearsed every line. "Let us be very clear," she said. "This decision is not sudden. It is not impulsive. It is necessary." Her gaze settled on Emma. There was no softness in it, no regret, only judgment. Emma felt her heart twist. She tried to sit up straighter. Her spine trembled. Eleanor continued, "Emma has never fully adapted to the standards of this family. She struggles with responsibility. She lacks discipline. Even her pregnancy has been difficult for her. It is not fair for my son to carry the weight of someone who cannot hold her own." Emma felt the words hit her like physical blows. She tightened her grip on her belly and whispered in her mind, "Stay calm. Stay strong. The baby feels everything." She swallowed hard, fighting the sting in her eyes. Eleanor spoke about her as if she weren't even present, as if she were a problem to be written off, not a human being sitting right there. One of the aunts cleared her throat. "But she's pregnant. Surely we should be compassionate." Eleanor's glare silenced her instantly. Pregnancy is not an excuse for instability. A Holt woman, even one who is expecting, must demonstrate strength. Emma has not. Emma blinked, stunned. "I've done everything I could," she said softly. "I've attended every appointment, followed every doctor's instruction. I've tried to balance the stress. I don't understand what I've done wrong. Eleanor gave a small, almost mocking smile. Your emotions are too fragile. Your health is unpredictable. You fainted at the charity gala last month. Your back pain kept you home from the company event. You cannot support Andrew's social obligations. This family requires presence and resilience. Emma stared at her, speechless. Those were pregnancy complications. The doctor said I needed to rest. And rest you did, Eleanor shot back, while my son had to attend events alone and explain your absence. It reflects poorly on him. It reflects poorly on all of us. Emma felt a heat rising in her chest. Shame, confusion, anger, hurt. The baby stirred again beneath her palms. Her breath shuddered. She looked at Andrew, silently pleading with him to defend her. He didn't. Instead, he took a slow breath and echoed his mother's words almost exactly. Mom's right. You've been overwhelmed lately. I feel like everything is falling on me. The missed events, the emotional moments, the strain. Emma stared at him, her voice breaking. I'm carrying our child. Pregnancy isn't easy. I thought we were navigating this together. Andrew avoided her eyes again. I just want what's best for the baby. This stress can't be good. Maybe separation will ease the tension. Emma felt something crumble inside her. Stress caused by what, Andrew? By me? Or by the pressure your mother puts on us? A murmur rippled through the table. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone whispered. Finally, someone said it. Eleanor's expression tightened. Placing blame is unbecoming of a mother-to-be. Her tone sharpened. And it is unwise to question me at this table. Emma's voice trembled. I'm not placing blame. I'm just trying to understand why I'm being painted as unfit. Eleanor leaned forward slowly. Because you are unprepared for the responsibility that is coming. I have watched you these past months, and your fragility is concerning. You have panic attacks. You cry easily. You show stress at the slightest disagreement. Emma's chest tightened. She had cried because she felt lonely, because Andrew had been distant, because Eleanor had criticized her nearly every day. Yet to hear her emotions weaponized against her felt unbearable. Eleanor continued, A Heir must arrive in a stable environment. You do not provide that. Emma shook her head in disbelief. I provide love. I provide care. I provide everything I can. Eleanor arched an eyebrow. But not strength. And this family is built on strength. Emma pressed a hand to her belly as another wave of emotion washed over her. Her baby moved gently, sensing her distress. She breathed in, breathed out. She tried to regain her balance. Andrew shifted back slightly, as if distancing himself from both women. I can't keep defending the same issues. Mom is right. I feel like you need more support than I can give. I have investors to manage. I have a company to run. I can't be everywhere at once. Emma's heart broke. I never asked you to be everywhere. I just asked you to be with me. Another whisper rippled through the room. This is cruel, someone said quietly. Emma held her breath. Her tears finally broke free. They slid down her face silently, falling onto the tablecloth and creating dark, uneven circles on the white fabric. She wiped them away quickly, feeling exposed and ashamed. Eleanor's voice cut through the moment. We are not here to debate. We are here to state facts. The marriage is no longer suitable. My son deserves a partner who can lift him up, not hold him back. And this child deserves a future without chaos. Emma felt a sharp pain in her chest. Chaos? You think I bring chaos? Eleanor nodded calmly, coolly. Yes, and it must end. Emma looked around the room. The faces were blurred through her tears. Some were sympathetic, some were indifferent. Many were afraid to speak. She was surrounded by people but utterly alone. She glanced down at the papers again. They lay on the table like a verdict waiting to be signed, not because she had failed, but because Eleanor had decided she wasn't worthy. In that moment, something inside Emma began to shift. The pain still burned, but beneath it, a new feeling stirred. A quiet anger, a quiet strength, a quiet understanding that the story being told about her was a lie crafted by a woman who had never wanted her there in the first place. She pressed her palm gently over her belly. Her heartbeat slowed. Her breathing steadied, and she whispered so softly it barely left her lips, This is not the truth, and one day you will know it. The tension in the dining room had grown so thick that Emma could almost feel it pressing on her skin. Every ornament on the towering Christmas tree seemed to glint with a cold light, as if reflecting the cruelty that now filled the room. The fireplace crackled softly at the far end of the hall, but even its warmth felt distant. The atmosphere had turned frigid, and Emma felt it settle in her chest. Eleanor Holt rose from her chair with the slow, deliberate grace of someone in absolute control. The emerald fabric of her evening gown shimmered under the chandelier lights as she rounded one side of the table. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor. Each step echoed like a reminder that she was the one dictating every beat of the evening. She stopped behind Emma's chair. The silence in the room grew deeper. "Since there still seems to be some confusion," Eleanor said calmly, "I will clarify the situation." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She tightened her grip on the edge of the table, her other hand instinctively returning to her belly. Her baby stirred again, sensing her unease. She wished she could cover her entire stomach like a shield. Eleanor placed a thick folder on the table in front of Emma. The sound was sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. Inside the folder were documents, charts, printed emails, financial summaries, a collection of papers Emma had never seen before. "These are examples," Eleanor said, her tone almost casual, "of why you are not suitable for this family." Emma stared at the folder, blinking through fresh tears. "What is this supposed to be?" "Evidence," Eleanor replied, "of your lack of preparedness, your instability." She opened the folder herself, turning it so that everyone at the table could see. She lifted the first page. "Here, your medical report from October. You fainted due to stress and inadequate nutrition." Emma felt her throat tighten. "That was because the pregnancy was overwhelming. The doctor said I needed to rest." "But you created a public scene," Eleanor said, her voice crisp. "Your fainting spell disrupted a charity event that was critical to our family's reputation." Emma shook her head. "I'm pregnant. Complications happen." Eleanor ignored her. She held up another page. "Here. Emails from Andrew's executive assistant. Events you missed. Meetings you canceled on his behalf. Parties where your absence required explanation." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I was following medical advice. I didn't want to endanger the baby." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "And in doing so, you endangered Andrew's credibility." A gasp rose from someone at the table. Another person muttered, "This is vicious." But no one dared to speak louder than a whisper. Emma turned to Andrew. "You told me it was okay to stay home. You said you understood." Andrew looked away. Shame flickered across his face, but he did not speak. Eleanor closed the folder slowly, as if finalizing a statement. "Emma, this family does not tolerate weakness, and your pregnancy has revealed weakness at every turn." Emma felt something break inside her. She forced her voice to remain steady. "Pregnancy is not weakness. Carrying a child is not weakness." Eleanor shrugged slightly. "Perhaps, but it is weakness in your case. We all see it." She gestured to the relatives seated along the table. "Your instability, your tears, your nervousness, your inability to handle stress. You are not fit to raise a Holt heir, and you are certainly not fit to be part of this family." Emma felt tears well up again. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her belly, trying to hold herself together. "This is the most important thing I've ever done," she whispered. "I love this baby. I am doing the best I can." Eleanor gave a thin smile. "Your best is insufficient." Emma felt her heart twist tightly. She looked around the room, hoping to find one compassionate gaze. Some relatives avoided her eyes. Some looked pained but remained silent. She realized then that silence was their way of surviving Eleanor's rule. Eleanor moved closer. Her voice softened, but the softness was dangerous. "Let me explain to you why this marriage must end now. If you remain with Andrew, you will bring strain and instability into this child's life. You will become a hindrance to his career. You will obstruct the Holt legacy. And I cannot allow that." The words hit Emma in waves. She felt dizzy. She placed both hands on the table to keep herself steady. "You're talking about my baby," she said quietly. "My child. How can you treat us like this?" Eleanor was unfazed. "Because I know what is best." Emma felt anger growing inside her, but it was trapped beneath the pain, the fear, and the disbelief. She couldn't find the strength to voice it. Not yet. Eleanor returned to the divorce papers and set them directly in front of Emma with sharp movements. She turned to the table, raising her voice just enough to ensure everyone heard. This woman cannot provide the strength our family requires. It is better that she is separated now, before the baby is born, before more damage is done. Emma's heart pounded in her ears. Her breath came in short gasps. She felt as if the entire room were closing in on her. A cousin across the table whispered, "She's pregnant. This is cruel." But the whisper dissolved into silence as Eleanor shot a withering glare in her direction. Eleanor turned back to Emma. "Sign them. End this quietly. You can still leave with your dignity." Emma looked down at her belly. The gentle curve beneath her dress rose and fell with her frightened breaths. She placed both hands over it again, trying desperately to ground herself. Her child kicked softly, reminding her she wasn't alone. Not entirely. Her voice came out fragile. "You're taking everything from me," Eleanor corrected her. "No. I am clearing the way for my son and for the Holt name." Emma felt a tear slip down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away this time. She let it fall. She let it soak into her skin as a reminder that she was still human, even if no one there seemed to care. And in that moment, surrounded by gleaming ornaments and elegant decorations and wealthy relatives who refused to intervene, Emma understood something with painful clarity. Her suffering wasn't accidental. It was intentional. It was orchestrated by a woman who had never wanted her here. And tonight, in front of the entire Holt family, Eleanor Holt had chosen to break her completely. The dining room felt smaller with every breath Emma took. What had once been a grand Christmas gathering now felt like a courtroom where she was the only one on trial. The warm glow of the chandelier seemed to dim as the weight of Eleanor's accusations filled the room. A knot formed in Emma's stomach. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, trying to soothe both herself and the child, who shifted uneasily within her. Eleanor returned to her seat, but her presence did not diminish. She sat with the confidence of someone who believed her authority was absolute. She straightened her napkin with a precise flick of her fingers. Then she folded her hands neatly on the table. The movement was so calm, so certain, it sent a shiver through Emma. None of this horrifying moment unsettled Eleanor. She wasn't acting on emotion, she was executing a plan. When she spoke again, her voice carried a tone that made the entire room listen. "There is something else that must be addressed." Her eyes locked on Emma. "If you refuse to cooperate, we will have no choice but to pursue legal action." Emma frowned slightly, confused and terrified. "Legal action? For what?" Eleanor answered without hesitation. "For custody, for the protection of this child, for the preservation of our family's future." A gasp rippled across the table. Even the relatives who had remained silent seemed shocked by how far she was willing to go. Emma's heart hammered painfully. "You can't take my baby." Eleanor tilted her head. Her tone remained ice cold. "If the court sees you as emotionally unstable or unable to provide a suitable environment, it absolutely can." Emma's breath caught. She had read about custody battles, but the idea of losing her child before she even gave birth was something she had never imagined. She felt her pulse quicken, her chest tightened. Her hands trembled as she pressed them protectively over her stomach. Andrew cleared his throat. He sat up straighter, as if trying to sound rational. "Mom is just saying that if we separate, we need to think about what's best for the baby. Stability is important." Emma stared at him, stunned. "Are you saying I can't give our baby stability?" Andrew avoided her gaze. "I'm saying the stress in our relationship isn't healthy. Maybe the court should assess what the best environment is." Her voice rose slightly. "Stress caused by what? By pregnancy? By being exhausted? By trying to handle all of this alone?" Eleanor cut in. "Stress caused by your inability to adapt to this family, not by the pregnancy." Her tone sharpened. "And a mother who cannot handle stress is a poor foundation for a child." Emma felt her throat burn. She tried to steady her breathing. "I am doing everything I can. I love this baby more than anything. You can't turn that into a weakness." Eleanor tapped a manicured finger on the tablecloth. Love is not enough, my dear. The courts require proof, and we have plenty of it. Emma's eyes widened. Proof of what? Eleanor held up the folder again. Your medical episodes, your emotional outbursts, your fainting spells, your absences, all documented, all concerning. Emma shook her head desperately. Those were normal pregnancy symptoms. Anyone can see that. Eleanor responded calmly. Anyone, perhaps, except the law. The law sees instability. And the Holt name cannot gamble with instability. Emma felt a wave of nausea. She closed her eyes briefly. The room spun. She tried to breathe slowly, but a cramp in her stomach warned her that her anxiety was affecting the baby. One of the older aunts leaned forward slightly. Her voice trembled with caution. Eleanor, perhaps this is too much. She is carrying our grandchild. Maybe we should discuss this more delicately. Eleanor shot her a look so cold that the woman immediately shrank back. Emma looked around the room again, hoping, praying for someone to stand up for her, someone to say that what was happening was wrong. But all she saw were lowered eyes, clenched jaws, people trying to survive the storm by pretending they weren't witnessing it. Eleanor placed the divorce papers directly in front of Emma once more. If you sign now, you will leave with your dignity, and perhaps we can avoid a custody dispute. Emma felt the words hit her like a knife. Avoid a custody dispute? You're threatening to take my child unless I sign. Eleanor gave a thin, satisfied smile. I am outlining your options. Emma's breathing grew ragged. She felt a small cramp beneath her ribs, not from the baby, but from fear. She placed both hands on the table to steady herself. Please, I'm begging you. I'm pregnant. This stress is harmful. Can we just talk about this in private, without threats? Eleanor replied as if she were discussing a business contract. Threats? No. This is clarity, and clarity is necessary for a child's future. Emma swallowed hard. She looked up at Andrew again. Would you let her do this? Would you let your mother take our baby from me? Andrew rubbed the back of his neck as if uncomfortable, but he still didn't defend her. The courts make those decisions, Emma. We don't. She stared at him, disbelief flooding her eyes. But you can tell them the truth. You can tell them I'm a good mother. You can tell them I'm doing everything I can. You can tell them I'm not dangerous, that I'm not an unfit parent. Andrew's voice softened only slightly. I don't want conflict. Mom has lawyers. She knows how these things work. If we fight this, it will get ugly. Emma felt tears well up again. She tried to blink them away, but another one slid down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, ashamed, but more followed. Her voice broke. You're just choosing the easy path, aren't you? No one moved to comfort her. Eleanor leaned back in her chair. You have a choice, Emma. Sign now and leave in peace, or fight and risk losing everything, including the child you seem so determined to keep. Emma placed her hand more firmly over her belly. The baby kicked gently, a tiny reminder of hope in the middle of devastation. She whispered, almost to herself, I can't lose my baby. Eleanor sounded pleased. Then sign. The room held its breath. The twinkling lights reflected off the silverware like tiny sparks of cold fire. Emma felt everyone watching her, waiting, judging, some with pity, some with fear, a few with cruel satisfaction. Her heart thundered in her ears. She felt cornered, trapped, terrified. The pressure around her tightened like a vice, and for the first time that night, she understood the true depth of Eleanor Holt's power. The dining room felt colder than the winter air outside, even with the glow of candles and the golden shimmer of Christmas lights dancing along the walls. Nothing could soften the sharp cruelty that had settled in the room. Emma could feel it pressing on her shoulders and tightening around her chest. Her hands trembled as she held her belly, trying to calm the small life inside her. But the stress pulsing through her veins made her entire body feel unstable. Eleanor watched her with an expression of pure calculation. No pity, no hesitation, just a confidence that she was in complete control of the moment. She lifted her water glass and took a slow sip, as if giving Emma time to absorb the ruthlessness of her choices. The divorce papers lay in the center of the table, framed by the bright Christmas centerpiece that now seemed horribly out of place. It should have symbolized warmth and family. Instead, it stood as a cruel decoration surrounding a mother who was being forced to break her own heart. Eleanor set her glass down softly. Let's not prolong this any further. It's time to sign." Her voice carried the weight of a command. Emma swallowed hard. Her throat felt dry. Her stomach tightened as the baby moved again. She took a slow breath, then exhaled. "I can't think clearly. I'm overwhelmed. This stress isn't good for the baby." Eleanor dismissed her concern with a wave of her hand. "The baby will be fine. What matters now is bringing clarity to this family." Emma felt a sting behind her eyes. "Clarity for you, not for me, not for my child." Eleanor's gaze hardened. "Clarity for everyone, including the child. A child should not come into a world filled with chaos." Emma felt her heart twist painfully at the word chaos. "I am not chaos. I am a mother trying to protect my baby." The corner of Eleanor's mouth lifted into a small, cold smile. "Then, protect your baby by cooperating." Emma felt dizzy. Her breath hitched again. She tried to take a deep inhale, but her lungs felt tight. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she placed a hand on the table to steady herself. Some relatives whispered anxiously. Someone at the far end said quietly, "She looks like she might faint again." Eleanor ignored them all. She took the pen and placed it in Emma's trembling hand. The metal felt cold against her skin, almost like ice. "Sign the papers now." Emma stared at the pen. Her fingers trembled violently. She felt her baby stir again, as if sensing her fear. Her chest tightened with panic. "I need time. I need to breathe. I need to think." Eleanor leaned closer. "Time is exactly what you don't have. Either you sign now, or we begin the legal process for custody first thing in the morning." Emma's voice broke. "Please, I'm begging you. This isn't right." Eleanor straightened up, her posture regal and merciless. "Right is irrelevant. The future of the Holt name is what matters." Emma felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Pain, fear, shame, powerlessness all twisting together into something heavy and suffocating. Her tears blurred the ink on the document as she stared down at it. The words seemed to dance before her through the sting of her tears. Andrew had been quiet for the most part, but now he shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should just get this over with. It's hard enough on everyone." Emma looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and heartbreak. "Hard on everyone? I'm the one carrying our child. I'm the one losing my family. I'm the one you're abandoning." Andrew looked away, guilt flickering across his features, but not enough to make him stand up. Eleanor turned sharply to him. "Do not waver, Andrew. This is necessary." Then she faced Emma again, her tone final. "Sign." Emma's tears came again. Her chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. She pressed one hand to her stomach, silently whispering to her baby, "It's going to be okay. I'm with you." The entire room watched. Every relative, every server, every pair of eyes seemed fixed on her. Some were filled with pity, others with discomfort, a few with quiet agreement. But no one spoke up for her. The silence of the room was its own form of cruelty. Emma blinked slowly. Her vision blurred. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She felt small. She felt fragile. She felt like one woman alone in the center of a storm created by people who had never cared about her. Her fingers curled around the pen. Her hand moved toward the paper. Eleanor nodded in approval. "Good. Let's end this disappointment once and for all." Emma's hand paused midway. She whispered, "This isn't a disappointment. This is my marriage." "It was," Eleanor corrected, "until you proved unworthy of it." Emma felt her breath catch. She looked down at her belly again. The baby kicked gently, a tender insistence that pulled her heart in two directions at once, to fight or to protect. Her tears dripped onto the signature line. She wiped them away quickly, ashamed that she couldn't stop crying, but every time she blinked, another tear formed. She felt as if she were drowning in her own desolation. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. The pen touched the paper. She signed her name, each letter shaky and unsteady. When she finished, her breath left her body in a shuddering exhale. She felt hollow, empty, as if something inside of her had been scooped out. A murmur rippled through the room. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others tried to pretend nothing had happened. The choir music in the background sounded almost cruel now, a cheerful melody that clashed with the devastation that filled Emma's heart. Eleanor leaned forward and picked up the signed papers with a proud, satisfied look. "Excellent. The matter is settled." Emma looked down at her hands. They were trembling. Her breathing was unsteady. Her baby shifted softly beneath her palm, as if he sensed that something in their world had changed. Eleanor folded the papers neatly. "Now, we can get on with dinner." Emma felt a wave of disbelief wash over her. Get on with dinner? As if her heart hadn't just been torn to pieces? As if her marriage hadn't just ended in front of the entire family? As if she wasn't a pregnant mother who had been broken in the cruelest way possible? She tried to speak, but no sound came out. The humiliation was not just complete, it was being celebrated. And deep inside her, beneath the fear and the pain, something small but fierce began to stir. For a long moment after she signed the papers, Emma couldn't hear anything. The choir music, the clinking of silverware, the whispers of distant relatives, it all faded away beneath the pounding of her own heartbeat. Her world had shrunk to the cold pen in her hand, the ink on the paper, the ache in her chest, and the soft, frightened movement of the child beneath her palm. She felt numb, as if her soul had stepped away from her body to avoid the pain. She set the pen down slowly. Her fingers wouldn't stop shaking, her vision blurred again. She took a breath that felt ragged and thin. The humiliation still burned her skin. She had been forced to sign away her marriage while carrying the very child that marriage had created. Her heart felt shattered, but something deeper than heartache stirred behind the pain. Something small, something firm. A spark. She pressed both hands over her belly, not just for comfort, but for remembrance. She couldn't fall apart completely. The baby moved again, almost as if responding to her touch. The warmth of that small movement pulsed through her. It grounded her in a way nothing else had that night. She breathed in slowly, then out. She lifted her head. The entire table was staring, expecting to see a defeated woman, a woman who would crumble, a woman who would accept her place at the bottom of the Holt family hierarchy. Instead, Emma pushed her chair back and stood up. The movement sent a subtle shock through the room. Several relatives sat up straighter. A few servers froze in place. Even the Christmas lights reflected on her tear-stained cheeks with a quiet defiance that hadn't been there before. Her knees trembled, but she stood tall. She stood with one hand resting protectively on her belly. Her posture, though fragile, carried a strength she didn't yet fully understand herself. Andrew looked at her, startled. "Emma, sit down. You shouldn't be standing. You just signed—" Emma looked at him for the first time, not with pleading eyes, but with clarity. "I know exactly what I just did." Her voice came out soft, but it didn't waver. Eleanor raised an amused eyebrow. "Is there something you wish to add?" "The matter is settled." Emma turned her head to the older woman. Something inside her clicked. The fear that had wrapped around her all night loosened its grip. She felt a strange firmness in her chest. "Yes," she said. "There is something I want to say." The room fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. Not confusion, not pity. Expectation. Emma rested her hands on the back of her chair. Her breathing slowed. Her voice grew stronger. "I have been quiet all night. I have tried to be respectful. I have tried to be patient. I have tried to be understanding." She paused, letting the weight of her next words build. "But I am done being silent." Some relatives exchanged surprised looks. The shift was noticeable. The fragile woman who had been crying moments ago now spoke with a stillness that echoed across the table. Eleanor's expression hardened. "Watch your tone, Emma. You are no longer part of this family." Emma nodded gently. "I heard you the first time, and the second, and the third." She placed a hand over her belly again. "But this child is still mine, and I will not let anyone treat me as if I am disposable." A small ripple of reaction moved through the table. Someone murmured, "Good for her," under their breath. Another relative stifled a silent gasp. Emma continued, her voice clearer now. "You called me weak. You said I'm unstable. You said pregnancy makes me unfit." She looked directly at Eleanor. "But carrying a child is not weakness. Surviving tonight is not weakness. And loving my baby is not weakness." Eleanor leaned back in her chair with a tight smile. Emotional speeches won't change anything. Emma didn't falter. "I'm not trying to change your mind. You made your decision long before tonight." She swallowed gently, steadying herself. "But I will not let this moment define who I am or who I will be as a mother." Andrew finally half rose from his seat, confused. "Emma, please, sit, you need to rest. Mom is right that the stress isn't good for the baby." Emma looked at him with an exhaustion that was deeper than her tears. "If you truly cared about the stress, Andrew, you wouldn't have allowed this to happen." Her words were soft, but they carried a heavy truth that made him flinch. The room fell silent. Emma continued, "I tried to be the wife this family wanted. I tried to be the daughter-in-law your mother would accept, but nothing I did was ever enough, and I'm done trying." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Don't pretend you have any power here." Emma held her gaze, unblinking. "I don't need power to speak the truth." A subtle tension moved through the room. Some relatives looked down, ashamed that they had remained silent all evening. Others watched Emma with a growing respect they had never shown her before. "I may be leaving this house," Emma said softly, "but I am leaving with my child. I am leaving with my dignity, and I am leaving with the strength I found tonight." Her belly tightened again. The baby kicked gently. She breathed through it. "You wanted me to feel small," she said, "but what you really did was remind me why I have to be strong." Eleanor scoffed quietly, but something in her posture shifted. For the first time that night, she seemed unsettled. It lasted only a second, but Emma saw it. The older woman saw that Emma had found something dangerous, a voice, a spine, a spark that could grow into something Eleanor couldn't control. Emma touched her stomach gently again. This child deserves a mother who can stand up for herself, even when her heart is breaking, even when the world is cruel, even when people try to take everything from her. Her next words were quiet, but they echoed through the hall. "I am not finished, not tonight, and not ever." A beat of silence followed. Then another. The room seemed to shift with her. She was still hurt. She was still scared. But she was no longer broken. The change had begun, and nothing would stop what came next. The dining room had grown painfully quiet after Emma's declaration. Her courage hung in the air like a silent spark that refused to fade. For the first time since the night began, Eleanor Holt looked unsettled, only slightly, only for a moment. But Emma saw it. The shift was small, but powerful. It was the first crack in the armor of the woman who had controlled this house for decades. Emma stood there, breathing through the weight in her chest, one hand on her belly as the baby moved again. She felt tired, drained, but stronger than she had been an hour ago. Her gaze remained steady as she looked out at the long table, filled with people who had been silent witnesses to her humiliation. Then came a sound that didn't belong, the creak of the large front doors swinging open. The noise carried down the hall and made several relatives turn their heads. A few eyebrows rose. No one was expected to join the dinner party. The Holt household was obsessive about protocol. Unexpected visitors were almost unheard of. The footsteps that followed were steady and measured. Each one echoed through the marble foyer, growing louder and closer, as if carried by purpose itself. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Who is that?" "Dinner is closed to guests." No one answered her. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She recognized that sound. She hadn't heard it often in recent years, but it had shaped the early years of her life. A steady, protective rhythm. A sound that always reached her before danger could. The dining room doors swung open. A tall man stepped inside. His presence filled the room before he said a word. He wore a long black overcoat, dusted with snow. His shoulders were broad, his expression was solemn, his eyes were piercing, warm and fierce all at once. Flanking him were two security personnel dressed in discreet attire. A third man carried a briefcase. Every member of the Holt family tensed, sensing authority even before they recognized the face. Emma's lips parted. Her breath caught. Relief washed over her like a sudden burst of light. "Dad." Her voice was soft, almost in disbelief. Lucas Grant looked directly at her. His expression shifted instantly. The firmness melted into concern. He walked toward her, ignoring the shocked faces around him. When he reached her, he placed his large hands gently on her shoulders. Then he lowered one hand to rest just above her belly. "Are you okay, honey?" His voice softened in a way she hadn't heard all night. "The moment I knew something was wrong, I came as fast as I could." Emma's eyes filled again, but this time her tears came from something different. Safety, recognition, the comfort of someone who truly saw her. Eleanor rose sharply from her chair, outrage filling her features. "What is the meaning of this? You cannot just walk into my house." Lucas turned his head slowly, his gaze turning cold. "Your house is holding my daughter, and she is clearly not safe here." A wave of shock rippled through the table. Murmurs erupted. "His daughter? Grant? He looks familiar. That's Lucas Grant." Eleanor's face paled. She recognized the name before she fully grasped the implications. Grant? As in Grant Holdings? Lucas stepped in front of Emma, as if shielding her from any further harm. "Correct. And, as in her father." Andrew stood up awkwardly, startled. "Emma, you never told us." Emma took a soft breath. "You never asked." The room erupted in whispers again. Conversations overlapped, eyes widened. Some relatives suddenly sat up straighter, realizing how severely they had misjudged the woman they had allowed to be humiliated. Eleanor forced herself to regain her composure. "This changes nothing. A last name does not erase instability. It does not change what she has done." Lucas ignored her words. He reached for the briefcase his associate was holding. The man opened it and handed Lucas a stack of documents, neatly bound and organized. Lucas placed the stack on the table directly in front of Eleanor. "Actually," he said calmly, "this changes everything." Eleanor lifted her chin. "I don't need to look at whatever those are." Lucas placed a hand on top of the file. "You should. These records show your interference in Andrew and Emma's marriage, your attempts to manipulate medical narratives, your efforts to fabricate evidence of instability, and, most concerning of all, several financial documents tied to Holt Industries that indicate mismanagement and hidden transactions." Eleanor's breath caught. "That's absurd. You have no right to look into our business." Lucas held her gaze, unflinching. "I have every right. 40% of Holt Industries has been quietly owned by the Grant family for years." The room fell silent again. Someone gasped loudly. Another covered her mouth. Andrew's knees nearly gave out as he sank back into his chair in shock. Emma watched as Eleanor's face drained of color. For the first time, the older woman looked unsure, unsteady, frightened. Lucas continued, "I have tolerated your family's arrogance for the sake of my daughter's happiness. I have stayed silent while she tried to earn your approval. I have kept my distance because she asked for peace. But what I will not tolerate is cruelty against a woman carrying my grandchild." His voice deepened. "And I will not tolerate the psychological abuse you have inflicted upon her tonight." Eleanor tried to find her voice. "You can't speak to me like that in my own home." Lucas replied calmly, "Watch me." He leaned forward slightly. "Emma will not lose her child. She will not lose her dignity. And she will not walk out of this house thinking she is alone. She has my full protection." Emma closed her eyes briefly, overwhelmed with the relief flooding her chest. She brought a hand to her heart, feeling it beat with a strength she had forgotten she possessed. Lucas looked at Andrew next. "And as for you," Andrew swallowed hard. Lucas continued, "You allowed your mother to humiliate your pregnant wife during Christmas dinner. You let her threaten custody. You let her break your vows for you. I am beyond disappointed, and I will be pursuing legal action for emotional and prenatal endangerment." Andrew opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Lucas then turned back to Emma, his voice soft again. "Honey, get your things. You're coming home with me." A tremor went through the room. The balance of power had shifted completely. Eleanor slowly sank back into her chair, trembling with silent rage. Emma finally exhaled. She felt lighter, stronger, safer. The baby moved gently inside her again, as if sensing the change. The storm of humiliation was over, and a new storm was about to break over the Holt family, because the truth had arrived, and it wore the name Grant. For several long seconds after Lucas revealed the truth, the dining room remained frozen. The crystal chandeliers glittered above them, casting a shimmering light on faces that no longer held the certainty they had at the start of the evening. Every ornament on the massive Christmas tree seemed to gleam with a sharper edge. The room that once radiated privilege now felt fragile, like a glass goblet about to shatter. Eleanor remained seated, stiff and pale, her fingers clamped so tightly on the tablecloth that her knuckles had turned white. Her former confidence had vanished from her face. She looked as if she were trying to reclaim control of the moment, but the room had shifted beyond her grasp. The power she had wielded so ruthlessly throughout the evening was now slipping through her fingers like sand. Andrew remained motionless. His eyes darted from the documents to Emma, then to Lucas, and back to his mother. He looked like a man watching his entire reality unravel thread by thread. Lucas stepped forward again, calm and steady, as if he were accustomed to walking into boardrooms where entire industries shifted on his command. His presence filled every corner of the room. He no longer needed to raise his voice. The authority in his tone was enough. "What has happened tonight is not just immoral," Lucas said, "but potentially criminal. Threatening custody to coerce a signature, manipulating medical information, attempting to exploit a pregnant woman's emotional vulnerability, all of this will be addressed." Murmurs spread across the table, louder now. This time, no one dared to defend Eleanor or Andrew. Not a single voice rose in their favor. Emma watched the scene with a surreal sense of stillness. Her hand remained on her belly. Her baby shifted gently under her palm, as if offering reassurance. At the start of the evening, she had felt small, broken, powerless. But now, something inside her firmed. The strength she began to discover in Part 7 continued to grow inside her. Lucas tapped the documents on the table. These show years of questionable transactions at Holt Industries, money funneled into undisclosed accounts, deals executed without board approval, inventories manipulated to inflate quarterly reports. "I have been patient, Eleanor, far more patient than you deserved, but my patience ends tonight." Eleanor's voice shook. "You have no authority to accuse me," Lucas replied calmly, "but I do as the primary shareholder. And now, as a witness to your treatment of my daughter, the board will be informed by dawn." Andrew looked suddenly alarmed. "Dad, Mom, this is getting out of hand. Maybe we should talk in private." Lucas turned to him. "You had hours to talk in private. You chose silence instead." Andrew flinched. He sank lower in his chair as if trying to avoid being seen. One of the uncles leaned forward, whispering to another relative, "If Lucas is telling the truth, the stock is going to plummet." The other replied, "It's already happening. Look at her face. Eleanor knows it." Eleanor finally stood, but her legs were unsteady. "You think you can come into my house," she said, her voice trembling with repressed rage, "and destroy everything I built?" Lucas took a small, measured breath. "You destroyed yourself the moment you attacked a mother and her unborn child." Emma watched as Eleanor's eyes flickered with fear. The older woman tried to mask it with outrage, but the mask was cracking. She had underestimated her daughter-in-law. She had underestimated the quiet strength Emma kept hidden behind politeness and humility, and she had especially underestimated the man who now stood beside her. Lucas continued, "I will not allow this family to endanger my daughter again, and I will not allow my grandchild to be raised in a house ruled by fear." The words hit harder than any accusation. Even the small whispers around the table ceased. The room seemed to hold a collective breath. Eleanor brought a hand to her chest, as if trying to steady herself. "You will not take this company from me." Lucas tilted his head slightly. "I won't have to. Your own board will. They've been suspicious for years. They just needed proof. Tonight, I brought it." Andrew's breathing quickened. His hands were shaking. "But I'm the CEO. The board won't remove me." Lucas opened the next folder. "Your emails show you facilitated the manipulation. The board will have no choice. You will be suspended by morning, possibly stripped of your position entirely." Andrew's voice cracked. "This isn't fair." Emma finally spoke, her tone calm. "Neither was tonight." Andrew looked at her. Shame swelled in his eyes. For the first time, he seemed to understand the consequences of the cruelty he allowed. One of the cousins, a young woman who had barely spoken before, set down her napkin. "Emma deserved better. We all saw what happened. This is the truth. You brought this on yourselves." Eleanor's head snapped toward her. "How dare you?" But the younger woman didn't back down. "How dare you treat a pregnant woman like that?" Another relative added quietly, "We all thought it was wrong. None of us spoke up. We should have." The voices grew. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady, honest. The silence that had once protected Eleanor had begun to crumble. Lucas waited until the murmurs died down. Emma will be leaving with me tonight. Any attempt to contact her or pressure her will be reported to my legal team, and custody will not be contested. You have no grounds, and after tonight, no judge will believe a word you say. Eleanor's face twisted in rage, but she could offer no argument. A relative near the end of the table leaned to another. This will be in the news tomorrow. Another whispered back, the Holt name will be ruined. So much for their reputation. Emma took it all in silently. She had never wanted revenge. She had never wanted power. But as she stood there with Lucas at her side, she realized she wanted something greater. Safety, respect, a better future for her child. Lucas turned to her, his expression gentle. Are you ready to go? For the first time since she arrived at dinner, she felt the answer form without fear. Yes, she whispered. I'm ready. She placed a hand on her belly again. A small, warm kick pressed against her palm, as if confirming her decision. Lucas guided her toward the exit. The room remained silent, no argument, no protest, no more threats. As she walked away from the table that had been used to shatter her, Emma felt a strange sense of closure. Not victory, not triumph, but release. Behind her, the Holt family sat in stunned silence. Their empire was crumbling, their authority fractured, their future uncertain. Ahead of her waited something new, something safer, something her child deserved. And the world would soon know what the Holt family had done, because the truth was out, and so was she. Snow fell gently outside the Holt estate as Emma stepped through the heavy wooden doors. The cold air brushed her face with a soft sting, but it felt cleaner than the suffocating atmosphere she had left behind. She took a deep breath. The air filled her lungs with a freshness that soothed her trembling body. Her coat was wrapped loosely around her. One of her hands rested on her belly. The baby moved softly under her palm, no longer tense, as if the danger had passed. Lucas walked beside her, keeping a protective but respectful distance. He didn't rush her. He let her take each step at her own pace. He understood that what she was leaving behind wasn't just a house, not just a marriage, but a version of herself she had fought to maintain for too long. When they reached the car, one of Lucas's security staff opened the door. Emma lowered herself carefully into the back seat. The leather was soft and warm. A small blanket had been placed there for her comfort. She pulled it over her lap and took another long, steady breath. Lucas joined her on the other side. The door closed silently behind him. Outside, the headlights illuminated the falling snow in soft, radiant streaks. For the first time that night, Emma felt truly safe. The car pulled away from the estate. The tall gates of the Holt property swung shut behind them with a low mechanical sound. Emma watched them disappear through the back window. They seemed smaller than she remembered. Less imposing, less powerful. She realized the fear associated with those gates had always been bigger than the gates themselves. Her voice came out softly. "Thank you for coming for me." Lucas turned to her. His expression softened. "You're my daughter. You will never have to face something like that alone, not ever again." The warmth in his tone broke something inside her. She bowed her head and wiped at her eyes. "I kept telling myself I could handle it, that if I just tried harder, they would accept me. That I just needed to be patient." Lucas shook his head. "You should never have to earn respect by suffering." He paused, then added gently, "Kindness shouldn't be a currency you trade. It should be something you're given freely." Emma took that in slowly. It felt true in a way that made her chest ache. The baby stirred again. She put both hands on her belly, feeling the life inside her respond to the returning calm in her body. "I want a different life for my child," she whispered. "A life without fear, without cruelty, without people who think power gives them the right to break someone." Lucas nodded. "You will have that, and your child will have that. You have my word." They drove for several minutes in silence. The city lights flickered softly outside the window. Christmas decorations glittered on houses and storefronts. Everything looked peaceful, almost serene, as if the world beyond the Holt estate were a completely different universe. Emma leaned her head back and allowed her body to finally relax. The tension in her shoulders slowly eased. Her breathing steadied. The weight on her chest began to lift. Lucas's voice broke the silence again. "I've already arranged everything for you. A doctor will check on you tonight. A legal team will handle the divorce filing. You won't need to speak to the Holts again." Emma listened, surprised by how comforting those words were. "Thank you," she said. "I was scared. I still am. But I feel less alone now." Lucas placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Fear is natural. Strength is choosing to move forward anyway. You showed strength tonight, more than you realize." Emma looked down at her belly again. Her fingers traced slow circles over the fabric of her dress. "I thought I gave up my future back there, but now it feels like I just walked away from something that was already dead." Lucas nodded. "You didn't lose anything worth keeping." Emma exhaled shakily, letting the last pieces of her grief go. Tears slipped down her cheeks again, but these tears were different. They didn't carry humiliation, they carried release. When the car pulled up to Lucas's townhouse, warm lights glowed from the windows. A wreath hung neatly on the front door. Snow gathered in soft mounds on the steps. It looked like a place where Christmas still meant peace. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. A fire crackled softly. A nurse was waiting in the foyer with a gentle smile, ready to check on Emma as soon as she was settled. She gave Emma a comfortable chair, took her vitals, and listened to the baby's heartbeat. A steady rhythm filled the room. Strong, clear, healthy. Emma placed a hand on her chest, overwhelmed with relief. "Thank God," she whispered. The nurse smiled. "Your baby is perfectly fine, and you are stronger than you think." Emma held on to those words. Later, after she had changed into warm clothes and settled onto a sofa near the fire, Emma looked at the Christmas tree in Lucas's living room. It was simple, soft, decorated with ornaments from her childhood, ornaments she had forgotten existed. Her father had kept them all. She touched her belly again. "This is the first night in months that I feel like I can breathe." Lucas sat beside her. "Then this is where your new life begins." Emma's eyes softened. "It doesn't feel like an ending anymore. It feels like a beginning." Lucas nodded. "It is." Emma looked down at the small curve of her belly. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "I promise I will give you a life filled with love," she said to the baby. "A life where you are wanted. A life where you are safe." The fire crackled warmly in reply, as if blessing her promise. Outside, the snow continued to fall in slow, peaceful waves. The world was quiet, calm, clean, and inside the warm glow of Lucas's home, a woman who had been broken hours earlier now sat stronger than she had ever been. Her marriage was over, her illusions were shattered, but her dignity had returned, her voice had risen, and her future no longer belonged to the Holt family. It belonged to her, and to the child she would soon bring into the world. A new chapter had begun, and this time she would write every line herself.